what we learned from G2 versus Vitality, 3-2 to G2, and wow, this was such a good final, and there is so much to get into. But firstly, I'm going to use two words for G2. I'm going to use two words. Mentality monsters. This was so impressive for such a new team and for such an inexperienced team. Like, they don't have that many massively experienced players here, and yet they look like the ones that were actually fighting back and putting Vitality under the pressure. And I want to get into that, but I also want to get into first, the fact that this was a best of 5 is insane. G2, in this grand final, they had to play their first ever official on Overpass with this lineup. That is already putting you on such a back foot, right? And obviously that was a map that they lost and they got kind of stomped on. And yet still, they are able to win the series. Ridiculous. So impressive. And just some overall takeaways before we get into the specific maps. Firstly, Mattis and Heavy God, man. These are the two that we're really looking at. And I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. Heavy God, especially on CT side as an anchor, this guy is like, look at these stats, okay? These are the CT stats for the series. 49 and 32. And he's in the bad spots, like a lot of the time. And he is such a cheat code to have on those CT sides. Because I'm telling you, the amount of rounds, they just rely on Heavy God somewhere on the map. And they say, you just do your thing here. And we can have like 3 players elsewhere making a proactive play, working together to take map control. Sometimes he's not even playing in the bomb site, and he's still able to lock the bomb site down. It's insane. It's insane. He does not get many resources, and that's so impressive. And on the other side of the coin, it's Mattis. Dude, I am so impressed by this guy, because if you didn't know, this is his big event history. These are all the big events Mattis has played in. Before joining this G2 lineup, he played 2 seasons of Pro League, and he didn't even make the playoffs. Right? I'm sorry, that doesn't count for shit. It doesn't. That's not the same as what we're seeing. That's not the same as these events, right? This is the first time he's really making it into the playoffs of a big event against top teams, into the grand final, and like straight from the start on that Dust 2, his aim looked like it was the best I've seen it. He had absolutely no fear. He played incredibly well, and he is their monster on T side in this grand final. He had some incredible entries. His aim is just so sharp. Like, his time to kill is incredible, right? And like, just insane. And by the way, I also want to add, okay, This to me is a bit of an indictment on Fnatic, okay? Because Fnatic, like, you think about that lineup, right? When he was on Fnatic, they had Blame F, right? Great late round player. They had Mattis. What is that team doing? What are Fnatic doing that they can't do shit with both of those guys? They have Jambo, who's a pretty exciting AWPer. I actually think Fear's a pretty decent IGL. Like, it feels like they had a lot of the pieces, and yet they didn't really do much with them, right? But anyway, back to this, right? Back to focusing on G2 and praising these guys, because, oh my, I mean, Hunter, like, he has a real knack for leading, and we'll get into that. Like, some of his timings are incredible. Morbs oftentimes sent in first as kind of a soldier and does a great job. And some Pius, I think these stats are harsh on him. I think he was pretty solid in this final. I think he did what he needed to. He was good enough, right? He was mostly landing the shots he needed to. He had maybe 1 or 2 moments where he had a real standout play. And that is the scary thing for me, is that this G2 team, they still have levels they can get to. Because they don't have the AWPer that can really like win rounds by himself sometimes and really pop off. And some Pius is capable of getting back to that level. And if he does, oh my god. Right? Now, I will get into some caveats, right? Like, firstly, obviously, this G2 lineup are playing together for the first times, and teams will start to learn how they play, and they'll get more used to them. And I'm not saying they're going to go on to dominate every tournament or anything like that. I think Mattis's play style is quite high risk, and we will see teams start to try and counter him, but still, so impressive. And the other thing I was impressed by, they were very rarely losing against the Vitality low buys. And normally, Vitality will beat you and they will break you with one of these low buys. I said it earlier against Mouse. Mouse were losing these rounds where you get frustrated because you're against a half buy and it just flips the game. They very rarely lost those, and sometimes they were actually winning them. Incredible. Incredible from G2. And let's just go through the maps one by one before we talk about anything else. Dust 2. This was, I know, a while ago, but this, for me, set the tone. It really did. And I'll be honest, this map, to me, it felt like Vitality were the ones that were kind of shook. And that G2 were just coming in and they were just going with what was working for them, going with the flow, relying on their aim, relying on their individuals, and it was working wonders. It really was. And I honestly felt like on this map, I kind of felt like, I don't even know how to say it. Just almost that like Vitality in the back of their minds, they had it a little bit that they knew that this was an important final for them. Because they obviously had an unbelievable season, an incredible season, one that may never be replicated. And yet they probably feel that there is that bit of pressure on them to start winning some events in this second season, in this second half of the year. And I kind of felt like that got to them. Like the players just weren't quite there. They weren't really playing that confidently. It was almost like they were in their heads about kind of needing this win, right? And G2 seemed to have none of that. Like, I think Vitality had one or two strats that looked a little off, but overall, it was a lot of just like weird timings and mistakes on this map. And also G2, obviously, punishing all of those, right? And this is also something with Vitality, is that obviously you look down their lineup and their best two players, I think everyone would agree, are ZywOo and ropz. The thing I do find with Vitality, and the thing I think is worth thinking about, is that both of those guys are not guys who are going to take over a round and really make a call and say, hey, we're losing 5-0. I want to do this. I want to do this to get us back into the game. They're both guys that kind of want to sit back. They want to play calculated. They want to be methodical. They want to let the game come to them. And like, to be fair, ZywOo had that one round where he aced on Dust 2. It was a great ace, right? And they just about got him into a post plant that was good enough for him to win. But having your best two players like that, I feel like sometimes it means when the mentality isn't fully there and when the team aren't making confident decisions, you don't have that player who's a star player on your team who's just going to say, okay, I want to make a proactive play. I want to go for a pick here. Let's get us back into this, right? And that's one of the things that it felt like happened on Dust 2. And it's hard to be critical of Vitality because they've been so good, but that's something that I kind of felt there. Like, I felt that that was kind of real, right? And I will say also, bringing it back to the G2 side, so many teams, after ZywOo got that ace, that incredible 1-on-3, so many teams would have started to get just a little shook and would have started to be like, oh shit, this is real. We are here. And ZywOo is making plays like that against us. And they might have just started to hesitate a little more. G2 didn't do any of that. They pushed on. They were really impressive. Mattis was great on this map. As I said, Heavy God, similar. Some Pius was really good here, actually. Just getting solid openers. All looking great. Going into the second map, though, I mean, Vitality was just clearly back, right? And then this is what scared me, because this is one of the maps you felt like G2 had to win, because you knew that Overpass was going to be a long shot. You've won your opponent's map. It feels like you've got to get this Mirage just to get yourself in a good position, right? And it just did not happen. It was completely different. And obviously, this is the map that is going to be remembered as the ZywOo Masterclass. 30 for 6, dude. Wow. Ridiculous. And I haven't touched on Vitality as a whole yet. But I will add, if you take that map out of the stats for ZywOo, he would be pretty pedestrian. Now, obviously, that's not fair, because this was an insane map, and he deserves credit for that. But yeah, so impressive. You saw towards the second half, it was this T side where Vitality just got 7 in a row. And something else people will forget. Dude, this first half, G2, they actually went behind early here, right? They lost the pistol. They got off to a slow start. They did a fantastic job at getting back into this. And initially, it was Flames doing a lot of the work for Vitality. I actually think this will be remembered as the ZywOo map, but I think Flames will go underrated and underappreciated on this map. Even these stats, I don't think quite do him justice. because he got them off to a really good start, anchoring that A site. He was just so consistently getting multi-kills and surviving there, and that meant that ZywOo was much more easily able to rotate over to A, right? And that was huge, and that got them off to a good start. And ZywOo, yeah, he had like a good CT side as well, don't get me wrong. It was the T side where he was ridiculous, this 16-0, of course. But I do also want to give G2 a little more credit, right? Because if anything, they probably should have got a 7-5 half out of this. If you remember that last round of the first half of Mirage, it was that round where ZywOo was on the A site and he got a couple of kills and then just about run away back into CT to run the clock down, even though G2 had an advantage. And it was very well done by ZywOo. Again, playing his really efficient game, just knowing exactly what to do at every moment. And when the round comes to him, he's great at that, right? And it was great from him, but it's a round G2 would have felt like they should have won. So coming into that second half, and again, G2, the thing I was impressed by is they adapted, right? They went for a lot of these A plays, and then they found that this B split was working. They found this exploit towards B, and I think it worked well because Vitality often were leaning really heavily towards A, wanting to defend that site. And again, just so impressed that Hunter as a caller, I think he's pretty legit. There are a lot of things that might start to slow down about this G2 roster over time, and Hunter's calling is one of them. But I'm pretty convinced that Hunter will at least be a pretty good caller. I think he's shown enough already. And that already is so exciting when there's so much talent on this team. But you go into the second half, and this was the map I really did love ZywOo, I gotta say. Because you know what? That T-side pistol, getting that ace. You know what I really loved? We got a sprinkle of a ZywOo who I think actually was really trying to force the issue at points. Right? He got those 3 kills onto the B site of Mirage. He's in that 2v2. He gets the kill at Apartments. And what I loved is that ZywOo there, he's in a 2v1. The player's coming in from Kitchen. Realistically, the highest percentage play, the thing that I would normally expect ZywOo to do, is just sit there. Because really, you probably shouldn't be peeking. Like, if the Kitchen guy's just holding you and one-taps you, then you're going to look like a fool. But sometimes, if you are just feeling it and you want to get that momentum going and you just want to win and you just want to like get the highlight play and really win with like confidence and almost like slap your opponents in the face, you go for that peak, right? Like you just know you're going to win the fight, right? That's what Simple, I think so many people loved about him, is he just like he'd have this aura that you just knew he was going to win it. And that's what ZywOo did. He swung himself from Van. And I loved it. And he got the ace because we know he's capable of that. And it was great. It was incredible. And then in the very next round, he gets the AK. He gets the spawn for B-Apps. He sprints over there and he lands that sexy, sexy one tap. Oh, that sound. It'll be ringing in my ears tonight because beautiful. And we just got that little glimpse, didn't we, of a ZywOo who can take the game into his own hands a little more. Right? And it's something we've said in the past, is that it feels like Apex sometimes has to call rounds to almost force ZywOo into those sorts of positions and moves. But it felt like ZywOo did it himself here. And it just continues throughout the half. And for the rest of the half, it felt more like he was just doing his ZywOo thing of catching people off guard or making the right percentage play. But just that Vitality were doing a great job at getting him in those positions in the first place. It worked out beautifully. Right? And then we got the Overpass. And I don't know if it's really worth talking about the Overpass because it's a very CT-sided map right now. And G2 just didn't get the CT start they needed. G2 would have needed a whitewash of a CT side here because their T side looked off. Right? Like this was a whitewash. This was the one map of the series where you're like, okay, this was kind of going to happen. G2 have no officials on this map. Vitality will be up to speed on it. And it kind of means that G2 in this grand final are having to come into it fighting from a map down, which makes it all the more impressive they go on to win because the Inferno, guys, I told you that I think G2 are the best Inferno team in the world. And this is the way to prove it. Because this was not just a 16-12 win against Vitality. This, for me, was the defining map of this series, clearly. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, Vitality won both pistols and they converted the rounds. And yet still, despite that, G2 are able to bring it back to overtime and win. That is the clearest cut case of being the better team and deserving to win that you will get, right? Because pistol rounds, we know, can feel a little more random than other rounds. You don't have all the nades. Sometimes it just feels like one or two lucky shots can make all the difference. So the fact that they're able to bounce back, it was incredible. And like, there's so many moments here on this map that I would call them mentality monsters. And this is why. Because they started out 5-0 down against Vitality. And to their credit, Vitality's rotations and trades looked great. I think for the first time in this series, it felt like the Vitality we know and love, where all the rotations and the trading game was just perfectly on point, right? And then Saw takes a timeout, and G2 instantly win a round. And Saw's timeouts, again, were incredible. Like, every time it felt like it turned the game when he would time out. But they still end up 6-1 down against a Vitality who have a great CT economy. This is a position that should be miserable for you. This is a position where you should be begging for like 4 T rounds. And if you get it, you snap their arms off and say, I'll take that. They come back and they get 6 T rounds from 6-1 down against a Vitality with a shit ton of money. Crazy, crazy impressive. And I think there were some Vitality whiffs in there and misplays. Like Apex got caught on Banana a couple of times. But there were some great responses and great reads from G2 and great just commitments from them. Right? And I think a lot of the time, what they were doing is they were just going with such confidence and going so early that Vitality weren't quite ready for it. And it would just catch them out. And it really worked out. And that's something I think teams might figure out over time. Like G2 were just going for a lot of these really aggressive plays. There was a round where Mattis was able to sneak up short. And again, I love he's willing to take that risk. Oh, so good that he's willing to take risks like that. Like, that is such a good sign for him going forward. Because often you get these aggressive players and it's like they get to the stage and they hesitate for a little too long. And hesitating for a few seconds in CS makes all the difference. But we saw none of that from Mattis. And yeah, just so good. So many good rounds like that. So many good plays where they just were able to catch Vitality off guard. And I think Vitality should have adjusted a bit sooner. But at the same time, fair play to G2, man. They were punishing them, right? And then even into the second half, it's 6-6. You lose the pistol. You go behind again. And this was the half that really proved to me that Hunter knows what he's doing. Because their utility timings on Banana were insane, man. Actually insane. They had so many nice switch-ups. They had a round where G2 threw the T-molly to the top of Banana, and then Hunter just has his own molly being prepared, and as soon as the G2 molly fades, and G2 want to move into top Banana, because they're like, cool, we mollied this, we know this bit's clear, let's clear sandbags, right? Let's clear top Banana, right? That's what they want to do, but Hunter already has his own molly prepped, which lands a bit deeper in top Banana, near the half wall. They flash in. They got 2 players swinging into Banana. And before you know it, like, G2 have Banana because Vitality were having to try and fight through the flames. They try and smoke it. They just die on Banana. The amount of times there were flashes that were great. Just the timings on them were incredible. Like, it was so good. Sometimes Hunter would throw a flash from one position, quickly reposition to a different spot, and just go uncleared because of it. Like, dude, he looks like he knows exactly what he's doing. Incredible. And here's something else I will add, right? This Inferno, to me, it was the defining map of this series, and I think it was the map that decided this series, right? They did this despite Mezzi having a really good game. Mezzi actually had a lot of impact. Mezzi had to bail Vitality out of quite a few rounds and got some impressive multi-kills. And I actually think Rops's stats aren't as good as like he deserved here. I actually think he deserved a bit more credit than this. I actually think he was really good on this map. I think he had a lot of good moments. But again, you look down, I mean, I want to say, like, look, ZywOo, yeah, he had a great Mirage, but here at Inferno, he didn't do a great deal. Like, he had a couple of good moments, but for ZywOo standards, it wasn't the Woo we know and love. Right? And then you get to the overtime, and by the time you get to the overtime, it literally just turns into G2 players taking turns to just, like, come in with insane plays. It's like, Mattis, sick 3k. Morb, sick 3k. Like, it's just so good. So cool. So good to see. And honestly, on this map, I think going forwards, Rops versus Heavy God towards Apartments and towards Pit, I think that will be such a fun matchup to watch. And I actually think Rops got the better of him on Inferno, which makes it even more impressive that G2 were able to win this. Seriously. Huge props. This was the map. This was the moment that changed it for me. And again, the other thing, I forgot to mention this. Vitality actually won one of their force buy rounds right near the end of regulation. And you think, oh my god, this is another moment where G2 might just crumble. It might just get to them right near the end of the game. But then G2 themselves win their low buy to take it to overtime. And they did it in the G2 way, where everyone rotates in. They fight together. The timings are good. It's all with confidence. It feels like just the chemistry, the natural chemistry on this team is there. Like, and there's one or two things that will be adjusted to by other teams. But I really do think this is the real deal overall, for the most part. Like, I really do think this team is a contender now. And I'm so excited about that. And then, honestly, Train felt like the victory lap. And, like, this is where, for me, Heavy God earned his MVP. Because, dude, his CT side, what even? 16 and 5. He was just everywhere. He was just everywhere. And, all right, okay. Everyone's obviously giving ZywOo props for this half, rightfully so. Mate, honestly, I think that Heavy God would be getting, like, incredible props. If ZywOo didn't have that insane map, this was just, he was just everywhere. Like, you forget that he was playing the inner side, the B side sometimes, because he was just doing all the kills on A as well. It was insane. And then again, in the most fitting way, when it gets to T side, it's just Mattis getting openings, getting entries all over the place. Incredible. Seriously. I think we need to touch on the Vitality side of things, right? Because for G2, I've said, I think there's so much to love here, so much great. Saw, I mean, as a coach, like, wow, like, he honestly might change how we view coaching. I really hope he does. I hope people start to look at him and say, this guy was doing it for ages on lower teams, and finally, he gets given a chance on a top team, and look at what he does. Seriously. Like, I think people have got to be looking into that. But I do want to say, for Vitality, as I was mentioning earlier, ZywOo, okay, yes, he had the incredible Mirage. Outside of that, right? And I don't want to take away from the Mirage, because the Mirage was very impressive, and it meant that they only needed to win one of Dust 2, Inferno, or Train, but that didn't happen, right? I think Rops was okay. I think he was good on Inferno, but he was a little missing on some maps. I think you look at this and you think that Rops had a stinker, but I didn't feel that when watching the game. Right? And I also think that part of the problem on his rating is probably because a lot of his low rating comes on this Dust 2, where I just felt like the whole team was off, right? So you look at the rest of the maps, like, he was pretty decent on Mirage. He was actually good on Overpass. I think he was decent on Inferno. And then on Train, he was actually their best performer. So I think he was actually all right. I think Flames had some pretty good moments throughout. I actually thought Mezzi was very good in Inferno as well. So it's like, it's weird. I don't feel like they had a terrible performance, but it's just one of those where I think the players in certain moments were missing some shots, and just the overall, like, team play wasn't fully there at times. It's hard to say. It just feels like everything was just slightly tapered back. And this is what we always say about a guy like ZywOo. I'm always in the back of my head thinking, like, could you do a little more if you realize the team's struggling a bit? Like, if you could have just won, like, one or two key rounds, I don't know. Like, I know it's a lot to ask. I know it's a lot to ask, and I know that my simple fanboy nature is coming out, but I have to say it. For G2, though, wow. Exciting times going forward. I'm so happy with them. I'm so happy with them. It's so nice to have another contender. Oh, just so good, man. Just so good. I'm so happy, right, to be a fan of Counter-Strike right now. And Heavy God at the end, like, clearly getting emotional. Mattis, like, stone cold, first time on the stage. I mean, this feels like it could be the start of a really exciting run of Counter-Strike, where we have some really, really good teams at the top all battling back and forth. And for Vitality, I think the question is, are they going to start to feel the pressure going forward? Because now it's going to start to feel like, shit, guys, we got to win something this season. Like, that's going to play on their minds, man. I'm worried about that. I really am. Because they would have looked at this and thought this was a golden opportunity against a G2 team who, if we play fundamentally good CS, we can hopefully beat. And I think the Inferno map is the one for me. Because what G2 were doing, especially on that T side, it was a lot of just these fast plays that were catching Vitality out. And I think Vitality will look back at that and say, we should have been a bit more ready for it. I think they should have been just a little more ready. Overall, though, obviously still in a good spot. We'll see if they can go ahead and close out a tournament win soon. I really hope they can, because I'm scared if they don't, it will start playing on their heads more and more. And if that happens, that can change you, because Counter-Strike is a mental game massively. But overall, what a tournament. If this doesn't get you excited about Counter-Strike, I don't know what will. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time.